And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go, and that people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways.
This is my video update on this Monday, midday, September the 30th, coming to you from amazing Dubai. Let's talk about some news. And that was John Kerry at a WEF meeting that took place on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, saying the quiet part out loud, which is that the First Amendment makes it very difficult for them, the globalists, the elite, to govern. That pesky First Amendment. Damn it, freedom of speech, freedom of press. You make it so difficult for us to rule. That's Carrie, the climate czar. Or did he resign as climate czar? I think he still is the climate czar. He still flies around in private jets and lectures the world on climate change. Carrie is a ketchup king. He married into the Heinz ketchup empire, and he also ran for president against George W. He ran and lost to George W. Now he's speaking at WEF events on behalf of Klaus Schwab. Eat them bugs, John. Eat them bugs. Yes, Klaus, I will eat the bugs, and I will abolish the First Amendment. Bugs are very crunchy, very tasty. John, can I put some ketchup on those bugs, Mr. Klaus? Yes, okay, John. You can put the ketchup on the bugs. Heinz ketchup. Anyway, that was Carrie speaking at this WEF event. Is Kamala still border czar, by the way? Or did she resign from that position? I think she still is the border czar, but no one wants to talk about Kamala and her tenure as border czar. No one in the mainstream media wants to bring up the fact that Kamala was or still is the border czar. I believe she actually made a trip to the border the other day. I don't know if she was making that trip as border czar or as a presidential candidate. But Axios, they put out an article yesterday claiming that Kamala Harris is in big trouble in Michigan, in very big trouble. According to Representative Elisa Slotkin, Harris is underwater in Michigan. And Representative Slotkin, she was on a Zoom call and with other party officials, and she showed some internal polling numbers out of Michigan. And according to Axios, it does not look good for Kamala and for the Kamala campaign. underwater. Those are the words that Slotkin and Axios are going with. And the former ex-prime minister, duh, the, the ex-prime minister of Czech Republic, Babiš, he said the other day that the conflict in Ukraine is going to be resolved by the elections in the United States. He said that if Trump wins, then the conflict in Ukraine will come to a resolution and to a ceasefire. And he said that's going to be good for Europe. Now, Babiš, he was prime minister 3-4 years ago, and he lost his re-election to an umbrella coalition party that the EU put together to specifically defeat Babiš. And last week in regional elections in Czech Republic, his party did really well. I believe they won 10 out of 13 regional elections last week in Czech Republic. And from what I understand, is he aligned with the Orban wing of things? I believe Babiš is aligned with the Orban side of the EU. Orban, Fico, and Babiš. But the EU, they made sure that Babiš lost 3-4 years ago, but it looks like his party is making a comeback. Don't call it a comeback, as LL Cool J once said. Yeah, so that's Babiš. Look, yes, if Trump wins, we are going to most likely, not definitely, but most likely we will see a quicker resolution to Project Ukraine than if Harris were to win. But Project Ukraine is going to be resolved by the Russians and on Russia's terms, not by the U.S. and on the U.S.'s terms. That's definite. Russia will resolve Ukraine one way or another, and it will be resolved on their terms and fulfilling their special military operation objectives. That is what Lavrov said the other day during his speech to the UN. So anyway, that was Babiš, and that is what he said. And from Czech Republic, we now go to the big news of the day, and that is the elections in Austria. We had big elections in Austria, and the Freedom Party, the FPO, they won. They won the elections in Austria. I believe it's the first time that the FPO came out in first place. They got about 30% of the vote. The ruling People's Party, they got about 26%, 27%. And the Social Dems, they got about 20% of the vote. Here is how the New York Times is reporting on the Austrian election. Far right wins Austrian vote, but may fall short of forming a government. And the New York Times is right. I don't know about labeling Freedom Party far right, because it seems like everything is far right. When you label Germany's Sarah Wagenknecht, when you label her far right, it's hard to understand what far right means anymore. But they are right, the New York Times, by saying that it's going to be difficult for the Freedom Party to form a government, because the other parties in Austria, they have vowed to not go into government with the Freedom Party. So most likely what you're going to see happen is, I imagine the Freedom Party is going to get a crack at forming a coalition government. The other parties are not going to agree to be in coalition with the Freedom Party. And then I imagine, I could be wrong about this, But I imagine the People's Party and the other parties are then going to be given a shot at forming a government, and they will combine forces and form a government, and they'll work to keep the Freedom Party out of power. I imagine that's how it's going to go down. Maybe that's not how things work in Austria, but you better believe it. The powers that be, the European Union, the globalists, they are not going to allow the Freedom Party to take over in Austria. No chance. You know why? Because the Freedom Party, they're very, very radical, according to the globalists. Very, very radical. And their leader, Herbert Kickl, is very radical. Because the Freedom Party, what they are promising in their party platform, in their manifesto, is they are promising no more immigration into Austria. I was going to say into the EU, but into Austria. No more migrants. That is one thing that they are promising. They are even talking about remigration of uninvited foreigners. That's a direct quote from their platform, from what their leader Herbert Kickl has promised. Remigration of uninvited foreigners. So that's going to piss off the European Union. But more importantly, the Freedom Party, they are talking against Project Ukraine. They want to see an end to the conflict in Ukraine. They want to put a stop to weapons and money going to Zelensky. And sin of all sins, they want to resume purchasing Russian gas. Not that the purchasing of Russian gas has ever stopped by Austria or by the European Union. They're still purchasing Russian gas, but a lot of it goes through Turkey and Turkstream. A lot of it goes through Ukraine as well. But the Freedom Party, they are talking about, I imagine they're talking about just dealing with Russia and Gazprom directly and purchasing Russian gas directly at a much better price. So that platform is very radical. Peace, they're talking about peace. And I can't say the word peace anymore. Every time I say peace, I think of peace. Peace Summit. They're talking about peace. They're talking about resuming gas purchases from Russia at the benefits of their citizens. And they're talking about stopping migration. So that is why the globalists in Europe are going to do everything they can to make sure that the FPO does not rule in Austria. So that is the big news for the day. That is the big story for today. And the Wall Street Journal, they are reporting that Biden reneges on his Ukraine promise. He classifies a strategy document that Congress made the price of aid. This is an article. Well, this is an opinion, actually, from the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. And I'm wondering why the Wall Street Journal would put out such an opinion piece from the editorial board. Why would they publish this? Why now? Why are they criticizing Biden and the aid that he gave to Project Ukraine? Because in this article, that is exactly what the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal is doing. They are basically saying that Biden promised Congress, promised the American people, Biden, you are reneging on a promise. Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so, Biden. Biden reneging on a promise? I can't believe it. Anyway, they are saying that Biden, he promised Congress that if he was given the $61 billion, remember the $61 billion? About 6 months ago or a year ago, the $61 billion to the Zelensky regime that Congress was debating and discussing and fighting over, that was eventually given to Ukraine. Remember that $61 billion that no one knows what happened to it, just disappeared. But Biden promised Congress, look, if you green light the 61 billion, then I will give you a strategy for the 61 billion and for Project Ukraine. And the Wall Street Journal is saying that Biden never gave that strategy. Actually, he's published this strategy, but according to the Wall Street Journal, he has not made it public, and he has made it classified, the strategy, the U.S. strategy for Project Ukraine. In April, lawmakers passed a nearly 61 billion supplemental budget for Ukraine after months of wrangling between Democrats and Republicans. One of the conditions stipulated was that the Biden administration articulate a strategy regarding U.S. support for Ukraine within 45 days of the budget's enactment and quarterly moving forward. Biden knew this commitment was necessary to get aid through Congress, and he signed the bill, the Wall Street Journal observed. Despite this, the strategy was submitted months after the congressionally mandated deadline, the newspaper said, citing a press release from GOP lawmakers. Also, and this is typical of the Biden stonewall, the document is entirely classified, the Wall Street Journal wrote, adding that congressmen want the strategy made available to the American public. Don't count on the administration following this order before November 5th, if it ever does, the board said, the Wall Street Journal said. A public release might mean that Vice President Kamala Harris would have to explain her own thinking on the war before the election. As long as she doesn't, and the administration covers it up, Ms. Harris co-owns Mr. Biden's record of muddled half measures. Interesting timing from the WSJ to publish this. So Biden's strategy that he promised Congress for release of the 61 billion is classified. His strategy for victory, his victory plan for Project Ukraine is classified. And the Wall Street Journal wants the 61 billion Ukraine strategy from Biden made public, so that the American people can get an insight as to how Biden envisioned victory for Ukraine over Russia. Yeah, we're never going to see that one. We are never going to see that one, because Biden had no idea how to defeat Russia. No idea. Their entire strategy was based on the Russian military running away when they saw the Ukraine military approaching during the 2023 super duper counteroffensive. That was the strategy. That was it. That was what they based their entire Project Ukraine strategy on, to defeat Russia, the Russian military running away. That's it. That's what this classified document is going to say. We thought Russia would run away when they saw our wonder weapons and the Ukraine military approaching them in the Kherson direction. That's it. There you have it. We're never going to see that document declassified, but the more interesting question is why is the Wall Street Journal running this editorial? Why, oh why, Wall Street Journal, are you exposing Biden's lies? Biden lying. Say it ain't so. I never thought Biden would lie, ever. I never thought he would renege on a promise. Anyway, that is what the Wall Street Journal is reporting. 61 billion. No one talks about it, huh? No one talks about that 61 billion. A lot of people are talking about the 8 billion that was given to Zelensky just the other day, because the Biden White House gave 8 billion to Ukraine, and it looks like the Biden White House is only going to give, I don't know, how much are they going to give to the disaster that is unfolding, the terrible disaster from the hurricane in in the southeast of the U.S. in North Carolina and Tennessee. What is the Biden White House going to give to the people who are suffering from that catastrophe? So let's now, what should we talk about now? Yeah, let's do an update on what is happening in the Middle East. And let's talk about this Jerusalem Post article. This is an interesting article from the Jerusalem Post. The Jerusalem Post claims that, let me pull up the article here, that Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense Austin, was furious with Gallant over the lack of notice on the Nasrallah strike. Basically, the Jerusalem Post, citing unnamed sources, they claim that Austin was not notified on Israel's plans to kill Nasrallah, to assassinate Nasrallah. And he actually called Gallant, and he was furious on the phone with Gallant. That's what the Jerusalem Post is saying. But the Jerusalem Post, that's what they first published. They've updated their article since the first publication. And in the updated version of their article, they claim that a U.S. defense official said that the description of the call between Austin and Gallant was overstated, and that a more accurate description would be that Austin was firm and candid in his conversation with Gallant. So the first running of this article said that Austin was furious with Gallant because the U.S. was not notified of the strike, if you believe that, if you want to believe that. Maybe Austin wasn't notified, but I have a hard time believing that the Pentagon or the intel agencies did not know. Anyway, Austin called Gallant. He was yelling at him, and then the Jerusalem Post, they published a follow-up, an updated version to the article, and they said, well, it really wasn't so bad. That's an interesting story from the Jerusalem Post, and we got word that Israel, they killed the IRGC Deputy Commander General Nil Furushan, who was meeting with Nasrallah. So this IRGC Commander General was meeting with Nasrallah in Beirut, and he was also killed in the bombs, the bunker bombs from the news that we're getting. They were well underground, and Israel, they dropped 34, I don't even know, 30, 40, maybe more bunker busting bombs, and they got Nasrallah, and they also got this Iranian top commander. And the Iranian Foreign Ministry, they vowed that they are going to retaliate, but they did not say how. The Iranian Foreign Ministry, they issued a statement saying that they will retaliate to the death of this commander, but they did not give specifics. So that also happened. And yesterday, Israel launched strikes into Yemen, into the port city of Hodeidah, and they targeted power plants and the port in this city, which according to the IDF, they claim that this port was being used to bring in weapons from Iran that Yemen was then using to attack Israel. So the war is not only escalating, it's widening, it's bringing in Yemen. The U.S. is absolutely getting pulled into this conflict, whether Austin likes it or not, if you believe this reporting. And that's the update from what's happening in the Middle East. All right, so let's do a clown world, and we'll wrap this video up in plus 40 something weather here in Dubai. And yes, I know I'm sweating, my shirt is soaked, but what can I do? What can I do? The hazards of the walk and talk video. You have to deal with the climate conditions. Navat Tea House. Very cool. So today's clown world is a good one, actually. This is a good one. we are getting reports that, one second, let me pull up the article. We are getting reports that Switzerland is backing the China-Brazil Peace Summit. Peace Summit. Podolyak, is it true that Switzerland now backs Brazil-China Peace Summit? How this be, Podolyak? Yep. Switzerland is backing the Brazil-China Peace Summit. Those are the reports that we are getting. Brazil and China, they held an event on the sidelines of the UN with various other countries in attendance, where they talked about their peace roadmap. It's not really a peace plan, it's more of a peace roadmap for Project Ukraine. And 17 countries were at this event. And one of the countries that attended was Switzerland. And they were observing this event. And after the event, the Foreign Ministry spokesman, Nicolas Bedeau, told Reuters that Bern supports this dynamic. The country that hosted the first peace summit is now supporting the Brazil-China peace roadmap. What does that tell you about the first peace summit when the host country of the first peace summit is now supporting a different peace initiative? And the Ukraine Foreign Ministry was plenty mad. They were plenty mad. Quote, "We cannot understand the logic of such a decision. After all, we together with the Swiss Confederation organized the first global peace summit on June 15 and 16 in Bergenstock," a statement from the Foreign Ministry read. Yeah. Yep. It's shocking, all right. Why would Switzerland do this to Zelensky? Why would they do this? It's almost as if the first peace summit that Switzerland was strong-armed into hosting was a complete farce and embarrassed Switzerland, and now they want to distance themselves from the entire first peace summit debacle. That's what it's like. Anyway, that is the video, everybody. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. Go to the Duran shop. Pick up some merch. I believe this is the Opera House. You will find a link to the merch in the description box down below. Take care.